This administration has been relentless in its efforts to deter Russia from its bad behavior. We inherited a situation where Russia was running all over the United States. These last few days have been, frankly, more heat than light.
All right. In that interview, also, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, saying that the president doesn't understand that Russians interfered in the 2016 election. He's been very, very tough on Russia. He will be at this Security Council meeting at the UN today with Nikki Haley. And among other things we understand is that they're both going to argue that envoys there need to be taking concrete actions on North Korea, separate of what's going on other issues. And the easing of sanctions can be discussed in due course. In other words, something that would happen as soon as I'm taking this leap, we see proof of cooperation on the part of the North Koreans. To retired four-star General Jack Keane, on what he makes of all of this. I guess the idea, General, is getting everybody on the same page, or that they're all going to go the same route. But at the United Nations, how's that going to go?
Well, I think Secretary Pompeo going there makes a lot of sense to give them some insight as to what's taking place. After all, it's the United Nations that passed 3 resolutions that are imposing significant sanctions on North Korea, actually historic, those 3 resolutions, and had the support of China and Russia in doing it. So I think he wants to keep the UN involved here. No one knows for sure, Neil, where this is going to come out. The president doesn't know, and neither does Secretary Pompeo. But he wants to keep all of those nations collectively together as we move forward. We truly do not know, despite the verbal commitments that we received from Kim Jong Un and his people around him, that they fully intend to denuclearize. We don't know that. We don't know that.
No, but the one thing I caught, General, with the Secretary's interview with Shannon Brim is that, yeah, he's very satisfied with the trips he's had. I guess 3 trips now to North Korea. But after his last one, I mean, they were bemoaning his gangster-like style and the gangster-like position of the United States. So obviously 2 different reads on this. But what do you make?
Well, I said before that visit a showdown was coming with Secretary Pompeo and the North Koreans, because he wanted them to clearly understand that we needed to see something tangible from them. And what do they really want?
Tangible being what?
Here's what they want. They want to know the number and the location of all of his nuclear weapons and all the activities around that. Fuel sites, storage sites, weapon sites, research test sites, everything. And the same thing for ballistic missiles. Tell us where they are. And then we want to be able to go there with independent investigators to be able to verify those locations. Now, we know where some of that is, Neil, so we'll be able to check the veracity of that pretty quick. We don't know where all of it is. And then he wants to see a timeline for actually disarming and dismantling, which would come later. But the first step is that. And I'm confident that he went in there and put that on a table and pointed at them and, you know, I mean, figuratively speaking,
tick them off.
This is what I want to see.
Yeah.
And that's what got that reaction, because now we had a demand on the table. And if Pompeo believes we're moving forward and we're making progress, it's because they're going to cough that up. Now, we'll know in a matter of weeks whether they actually do that or not.
Yeah. It's funny you illustrated that by pointing your finger. I'm told even among many in Asian societies, that is interpreted to be a rude gesture.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you know, the media was complaining about long dinners and the rest of it. In the Asian culture, trust is something you earn over time, right. And you earn it actually through social engagement, getting to know one another. So you go to a 4 or 5 hour dinner, and I've been to these. That's just the norm.
Really?
It's getting to know one another.
Are you eating the whole time? Or?
Drinking the whole time.
Okay, I understand.
The degree that they drink is just unbelievable.
Just keeping up with them. But, General, as we wait, and this is the seat at the United Nations right now, we're going to hear from our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, and our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. There are others there as well. I should stress the ambassador from Japan, South Korea, others who could show up, including the Secretary General. That might not be at this particular event, but they've all been meeting back and forth on a variety of issues, everything from how to deal with North Korea, as you know, and getting ready for the UN General Assembly, I guess, in October. But what do you think of our relationship with foreign partners and players? Of course, we quit a key committee and a panel at the United Nations, and we've sent the word out, why are we going to support you if you constantly stick it to the U.S.? So among the friends you talk to in the international community, what did they tell you?
Well, our president's controversial, to say the least. At any place you go in the world, whether I go to the Middle East, Europe, Far East, which I'm about to do in a couple of weeks, first question always is, what's going on with the president?
Is that right?
Yeah, he fascinates them. But the issue is, listen, after 8 years of Obama's national security and foreign policy of actually disengaging from the world, despite the controversy that surrounds the president with his tweeting on a regular basis, the fact of the matter is that the United States has reached out to our alliances to try to strengthen them. You see what he's doing in NATO. He's trying to strengthen it. The same thing in the Far East. China is trampling all over our allies in that region, and we're trying to shore up those relationships and develop a strategy to stand up against them. In the Middle East, he went there July of last year, and he said, I stand with you against the #1 strategic enemy in the Middle East, which is Iran. I will be there with you, and I'm going to help you with the Islamic extremist problem as well. So despite the rhetoric and despite the controversy surrounding tariffs, economic warfare that's going on between the United States and China and others, the alliances out there believe that the United States is what? Back on the world stage again, exercising global leadership. That's a fact.
So did the president dial any of that back with the Putin meeting?
Yeah, I think the Monday was probably maybe the low point of his presidency. You know, he misspoke. The tone wasn't right. He should have been firm, not conciliatory, and certainly not appeasing on a world stage like that. That should have been that appendage to the summit. The summit's the main issue, but that appendage, which is called a press conference, the effort involved in that should have been as great as the summit. What are the outcomes we want from this? 2 or 3 outcomes. Rehearse it, script it, and then what's the tone through that whole thing? I don't believe that was done. They gave a script to the president, went out there and just was the president.
But he did indicate in this interview with CNBC that getting along with Vladimir Putin, I think you said the same last time we chatted, that's a plus. It shouldn't be a bad thing to talk to, leader of our adversary or whatever. He defines Russia to be a competitor or whatever. He says, if things don't work out, I'll be the worst enemy he has ever had, referring to Vladimir Putin. What did you make of that?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. I mean, talking to Putin...
But what's work out? What does that mean?
Putin wants this meeting ever since he became president. Why is that? Because he knew from the campaign that President Trump was going to take a totally different path than President Obama did, who disengaged. I think President Trump, when you just look at the policy, put the rhetoric aside,
right,
just the policy, you've got the president is tough and demanding on Putin and Russia since Ronald Reagan. No one has come close. What am I talking about? The Trump defense buildup, comparable to the Reagan defense buildup, strengthening the defense budgets in NATO, deploying extra troops on the eastern border, which is Russia's western border, pushing back on Russia in Ukraine with anti-tank weapons. These are all things Obama wasn't doing. And he was a principal in the declination of our defense budgets, attacking Russia's stooge, Assad, twice for using chemical weapons. And the Russians tolerated that use. There's no doubt about that. And pushing back on Iran, which is also Russia's ally. That's what Putin is keeping score on. That's why he wants to talk to this president, because there's more to come. There's obviously sanctions. We've dismissed people. We've closed down sites. And I think the president is right. If we don't get this worked out, then he's going to be even tougher than he is right now.